Logan Parker had never felt his heart beat so fast as he stood in front of the girl he had loved for years, Emily Carter. It had taken him months to gather the courage to believe that a girl like her, a vision of elegance, confidence, and unattainable beauty, could ever look at a guy like him, the quiet, bookish type who never quite fit in. But today was supposed to be different. It was a senior prom, the night where he had planned to confess his feelings in front of everyone, to let the world know how much he adored her. He had rehearsed the words over and over again, had spent weeks preparing for this moment, imagining her surprise, her acceptance, maybe even a kiss under the dazzling ballroom lights. But the moment he stood before her, holding out the elegant rose bouquet in his shaking hands, Emily's laughter cut through the air like a sharp blade. At first, Logan thought he had misheard, that maybe she was nervous, but then he saw her friends, those perfect, flawless socialites, giggling behind her, their eyes filled with cruel amusement. "You? Confessing to me? Logan, this must be a joke," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, her perfectly manicured fingers covering her smirk. His heart pounded, a mixture of confusion and rising humiliation coloring his face. I really like you, Emily," he stammered, his voice breaking under the weight of the moment. The crowd around them grew larger, sensing the drama unfolding. Emily shook her head, flipping her long, golden hair over her shoulder. "You really thought I'd ever go out with a loser like you?" she sneered, stepping back as though his very presence disgusted her. "Come on, everyone. Who actually believed that someone like him had a chance with someone like me?" Laughter erupted from every direction. Logan stood frozen, his vision blurring, his grip on the flowers loosening until they fell to the floor, crushed beneath the heels of mocking classmates. He wanted to disappear, to escape the walls closing in on him, but his feet refused to move. His world crumbled that night, not just because he had been rejected, but because he had been humiliated, utterly and completely destroyed in front of everyone. Emily had not just turned him down, she had shattered him beyond repair. And as he turned on his heels and ran from the ballroom, drowning in his own disgrace, a single burning thought ignited deep inside him. One day, he would make her regret this moment. One day, she would see him, and she would wish she had never laughed at Logan Parker. For weeks after that night, Logan Parker disappeared from the world he once knew. He deleted his social media, stopped attending school, and locked himself away in his room, replaying a humiliating moment over and over again in his mind like a nightmare on repeat. He could still hear Emily's laughter, still see the way she looked at him like he was nothing, less than nothing. His world had crumbled that night, but in the wreckage of his self-esteem, something new began to grow. He was done being the quiet, overlooked guy. He was done being the joke. He was going to change. Logan knew that revenge wasn't about childish pranks or cruel words. It was about power. The kind of power that would make her regret every second she had spent mocking him. The kind of power that would make her chase him. But first, he needed to become a completely different man. He left his small town, cutting off contact with anyone who had once known him, and moved to New York City to stay with his uncle, a ruthless businessman who owned a string of high-end clubs and exclusive enterprises. His uncle was cold, calculating, and had built himself up from nothing. Logan needed that kind of resilience. Under his uncle's guidance, he spent the next 2 years transforming himself. Physically, he changed entirely. The scrawny, awkward boy who had once stood trembling before Emily Carter became a figure of dominance. He spent hours in the gym, pushing his body to the brink, sculpting himself into a man that no one would dare laugh at. His once shy, uncertain eyes were now sharp and calculating, his posture exuding the kind of confidence that turned heads wherever he went. But his transformation wasn't just physical. Logan threw himself into business, learning the art of negotiation, persuasion, and control. He immersed himself in finance, investments, and networking, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. Within a year, he had built his own empire, using the money he had saved and the guidance of his uncle to create a chain of luxury brands that catered to the elite. People no longer ignored him. They sought his approval. He had become someone powerful, someone untouchable. By the time 2 years had passed, Logan Parker no longer existed in the eyes of the world. In his place stood Logan Blackwell, a name that was whispered in elite circles, a man who commanded attention with his mere presence. He was no longer the desperate boy who had once chased after Emily Carter. Now, women chased after him, but none of them mattered. Only she did. Logan had kept tabs on Emily throughout the years. It was almost too easy. She had remained in their small town, going to a local university, still living the same life she had always known. But unlike before, her world was beginning to crack. The once untouchable queen of high school was struggling. Her family's wealth had taken a hit after her father's failed investments, and her extravagant lifestyle had begun to slip through her fingers. She was no longer the golden girl she had once been, but she still carried herself as if she was. That, Logan thought, would make her downfall even sweeter. Now it was time to begin. The first step was orchestrating their reunion. He ensured his name appeared in the right places: fashion magazines, elite events, business articles. He wanted his presence to be undeniable. He wanted her to see him before she even knew who he was. And then, the perfect opportunity presented itself. Emily, desperate to maintain her luxurious lifestyle, had been attempting to network her way into the elite social scene. She wanted connections, opportunities, something to lift her from the slow downfall she was experiencing. And Logan, now a powerful name in high society, was the kind of man she would dream of impressing. So he made sure she got an invitation to one of his exclusive high-profile events. He sent it anonymously, knowing she would be too tempted to decline. And just like that, the stage was set. The night of the event, Logan stood at the center of his empire, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that exuded wealth and power. He was surrounded by models, entrepreneurs, and billionaires, every person in the room eager to impress him. But his focus was on only one thing: her entrance. And then she arrived. Emily walked into the grand ballroom, her eyes wide as she took in the opulence surrounding her. She was dressed in a sleek gown, her posture still dripping with arrogance, but Logan could see the cracks beneath it. She was trying too hard, trying to cling to a world that was slipping through her fingers. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on him. Logan could see the moment recognition hit her, the moment confusion flickered across her face. He was familiar, yet completely unrecognizable. He let her stare, let her wonder, before finally he turned away. He didn't acknowledge her. He didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. And just like that, the game had begun. Emily's pride wouldn't allow her to let it go. He could feel her eyes on him all night, could sense her curiosity burning. She wanted to know who he was. And more importantly, she wanted his attention. After years of humiliation, of being the one who had chased, the roles had reversed. Now, she was the one desperate for him. But Logan wasn't done yet. No, this was only the beginning. Emily Carter had always known how to draw a man's attention. But for the first time in her life, she found herself chasing it. And worse, she didn't even know why. The moment she had laid eyes on Logan Blackwell at the extravagant gala, something about him had unsettled her. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. He was undeniably powerful, a man who moved through the room with an effortless command that made even the wealthiest guests seek his favor. His dark, sharp features, the chiseled jaw, the piercing gaze, it was as if he stepped right out of billionaire fantasy. But he had ignored her. That, more than anything, was what made her desperate to know him. She had spent her whole life being admired. Men had always lined up for her attention. But this man, Logan Blackwell, had barely spared her a glance, and it infuriated her. Determined to change that, she lingered near him, offering smiles, initiating small talk with those around him, hoping he would finally look at her. When he did, it was with a cold indifference that sent an unfamiliar chill down her spine. Finally, unable to bear the silence, she approached him. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, tilting her head, her voice laced with charm. "I don't believe we've met before." For the first time that night, Logan truly looked at her, and it was in that moment that she felt something she never had before: vulnerability. His eyes, dark and unreadable, seemed to pierce right through her. "Haven't we?" he said, his lips curving ever so slightly. Emily felt her breath hitch. There was something about his voice, something teasing yet deadly, as if she were playing a game she hadn't even realized she was in. She forced a laugh. "Well, I would have remembered meeting someone like you. Logan took a sip of his whiskey, his gaze unwavering. Is that so? Emily's confidence wavered for a split second, but she recovered quickly. So tell me, Mr. Blackwell, what do you do? He smirked. I own things. The response was vague, but it only intrigued her more. And what exactly do you own? He leaned in slightly, his presence overwhelming. Everything. For the first time in her life, Emily felt as though she was the one being hunted. That night, Logan didn't give her more than a few minutes of his time before excusing himself, but was enough to make her obsess. Over the next few weeks, she found herself drawn deeper into his world. Invitations to exclusive events kept coming, and every time she attended, she found herself waiting, hoping for another interaction with him. And Logan gave her just enough to keep her coming back. He was never too eager, never too available. He let her want him. And when she was at her weakest, when her father's financial situation reached rock bottom, when she was forced to face the reality that she was no longer the wealthy, desirable queen of high society, Logan finally struck. One evening, she received an invitation she couldn't ignore, a private dinner, hosted by him. When she arrived at the luxury penthouse, her heart pounded with anticipation. The place was unlike anything she had ever seen. Modern, sleek, a view that overlooked the entire city. And at the center of it all was him, Logan Blackwell. Dressed in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable. They dined, they talked, and for the first time, she felt like she was the one trying to impress him. She laughed at his subtle jokes, complimented his business ventures, and even subtly flirted, though to her dismay, he seemed utterly unaffected. Finally, as the night drew on, Emily decided to be direct. She leaned in, her voice soft. Logan, I feel like we have a connection. For the first time, he let out a quiet chuckle. Do you? She smiled. Yes, and I think you feel it too. He set down his glass of wine, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. You really don't remember me, do you? Her brows furrowed. What? Logan leaned forward. 2 years ago, senior prom. A boy stood in front of you, holding out a bouquet of flowers, confessing his feelings. Emily froze. Her mind raced. She could still see it. The awkward, nerdy boy with messy brown hair, the trembling hands, the way she had laughed in his face. No, it couldn't be. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes widened. Logan. He smirked. There it is. Her blood turned ice cold. The confident, powerful man sitting before her was the same boy she had destroyed. She opened her mouth, her voice faltering. Logan tilted his head. What's wrong, Emily? You look like you've seen a ghost. I didn't. She couldn't even form a coherent sentence. Logan stood, slowly walking around the table, his presence suffocating. You thought I'd stay the pathetic loser you humiliated? That I'd spend my life as a joke you made me? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Emily, that boy is dead. She swallowed hard, her heart hammering. I was young, I mean. Oh, you meant every word. Logan cut her off, his tone sharp. But don't worry, I'm not here for an apology. He smirked. I'm here to give you exactly what you deserve. Emily's breath shuddered. What do you mean? Logan leaned in, his voice dropping. Did you really think I let you into my world by accident? That you just happened to find yourself drawn to me? His smirk widened. No, Emily, I made you want me. Her stomach twisted. I let you think you were chasing me. I let you believe you were regaining control. He chuckled. But you were never in control. I've been playing you from the start. Tears pricked her eyes. Logan, please. He straightened, slipping his hands into his pockets. But don't worry. I have no interest in revenge. He smirked. Because I already won. Her lips parted. What? He gestured toward the penthouse. Look around you, Emily. This is my world now. And you, he let out a short laugh. You're just another desperate girl looking for a way in. She flinched as if he had slapped her. Do you know what the best part is? He tilted his head. You wanted me. You fell for me without even realizing who I was. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But the difference is, he continued coldly, I don't want you. Emily felt her knees weaken. He took one last step closer, lowering his voice. Now you know what it feels like. She stared at him, her heart breaking in a way she had never known before. Logan smirked. Goodbye, Emily. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, broken, humiliated, and utterly alone.